Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Wall Street Reporter's next Superstock live stream for today, July 29th. We have two great companies to present to you today. These are debut presentations, two exciting companies I know you will be very interested in learning more about. We have CloudMD. The stock symbol on the OTC is DOCRF. DOC as in Doc on the TSX venture, and this is a company in the fast-growing telemedicine space. This is like one of the hottest areas right now. The CEO is Dr. Issam Hamza. He is the CEO of, again, CloudMD, and he will be followed by Valio Pharma, which is a specialty pharma company. The stock symbol is VPH on the CSE, and they're going to be actually going onto the OTC markets in the next few weeks. So it's really an opportunity, again, to kind of get in on that ground floor. And that's CEO is going to be Steve Sabiak, and he'll be coming up in about 30 minutes. As always, our goal with Wall Street Reporter's next Superstock live stream is to bring you companies which have 10x plus upside potential. And we've seen this in the last couple of presenters we've had. We've had Nextech AR, we've had what is it, Cytodyne, we've had Imagine AR. These are stocks that went up between 10x and 20x in the last 6 to 9 months, and we're going to find out today if today's presenters have that same upside potential. So our goal is, again, we're looking for companies which have three characteristics. These are companies that are going after multi-billion-dollar opportunities. These are companies that are at key inflection points right now, right at the threshold of explosive growth, and most importantly, they have multiple catalysts in place, near-term catalysts, which can unleash that shareholder value. There's going to be exciting news flow in the coming weeks and months. So definitely, this is an opportunity to learn more and follow these companies. So so the main thing with these presentations, as always, is to ask the question. So after Dr. Hamza is done, please ask your questions, and that's really one of the great things about these presentations. It's your questions, the audience questions that make these things special. So with that said, let me introduce you to Dr. Hamza, and Dr. Hamza, take it away.
Thanks, Jack, and thanks for having me. I'm just going to make sure everybody can see the screen here. Jack, you're good with that?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to go through our presentation relatively quickly so that we can open up to questions. This is an exciting field, an exciting space, and I'd like to just kind of focus on a few things about our company and about the space as well. A little bit about myself. I'm a family doctor over 20 years, but really been involved on the entrepreneur side and the technology side even before that. And so even when I got into medicine, I always believed the future was not the brick and mortar doctor focused care. It was going to be more of a patient centric model. Now, the problem was I didn't control any of the technologies that needed to be done best way. So what I did was I built a series of clinics. I connected all of them. I started using third-party software to give patients things like 24/7 online booking and telemedicine. And this is, again, like we're talking 7, 8 years ago or longer. But all these third-party vendors really didn't have any need or any want to innovate or integrate. And so really that frustration presented with CloudMD about 2 years ago. I'd like to focus on a couple more people on our team just to show you that we really are coming from a strong management team and a team that is full of doctors and entrepreneurs with over, I think, 100 years of medical experience. So we kind of understand the doctor side, the patient side, and the government side as well. Dr. David Ostro was the president and CEO of the biggest health authority here in British Columbia and Canada. Retired from that position, got invited to be on the board of TELUS Health, stepped down off of that board to join us as our chief medical officer a year ago. We also have Dr. Sohal Goyal that just joined as the head corporate development in Ontario. He's, again, well regarded in his field, head of major organizations and doctor groups and so on. And we just expanded in that province as well. And then Mark Kohler, very experienced entrepreneur and executive chairman of QHR that was bought by Loblaws for about 170 million. So why are we here? Healthcare in general has been broken for a while around the world. And the problem is that it's not sustainable. It was never sustainable. And the costs were going up as the patient population was aging, getting more sicker, and less access to care. And the problem is if you don't have access to the primary doctor in particular, you can't get anything else done. You can't get diagnosed, you can't get prescriptions, you can't get referrals, and that costs the system a lot of money when these diseases go undiagnosed or you end up in emergency for something like a prescription refill. And so governments around the world have been trying to increase access to care by, let's say, producing more doctors, but that didn't solve the problem. And the reason is when the new doctors especially really focused on lifestyle, their own lifestyle, they didn't really want to take on the big practices as before and work the long hours and 24/7 care of the patients and so on. It was more about kind of their lifestyle as well as the balance between work and life. And so that didn't solve the problem. And we've always said technology was going to be the great equalizer, but there was 3 barriers to get this really to the forefront. One was going to be patient adoption. Would patients want to do telemedicine, video, conferencing with the doctor, the specialist, and so on? Would doctors do it? Are they going to get paid for it, right? I mean, are they going to do telemedicine if they're not getting paid for it, or if they're getting paid for it, if they're comfortable with their ordinary routine? And then governments. Are governments going to allow it and pay for it on top of it? And all 3 barriers, we've always said those barriers are going to come down eventually. But all 3 barriers actually disappeared in one day in March with COVID. So with COVID-19, all 3 barriers, from the patients needing to see a doctor online, to the doctors needing to see their patients or not getting paid and not being able to take care of their patients, to the governments around the world and North America in particular, removing any regulations that kind of stopped it before and actually paying for it. So the expansion of Medicaid and the removal of blockages between states in the US, and the same thing in Canada, where every province basically came out with bill and code for telemedicine. And so all 3 barriers disappeared overnight, and the whole idea of telehealth moved forward at least 5 years, and we talk about that. So what's our vision? What's different about what we do and what we're saying and what other people are saying and so on? We've said this for a long time. This is not just post-COVID. This is not a startup that just came out of the opportunity right now. We've been saying this for a while. The future of healthcare is a patient-centric model, a patient in the middle, and everybody else in the healthcare team circling around that patient. That means not just your primary care doctor, not just the family doctor, but the specialists, the counselors, the psychiatrists, the pharmacists, the physios, everybody circling around that patient, connecting to them using a platform and working as a team. And for the very first time, engaging the patient in their own healthcare, actually having a patient know what's wrong with them, what medications they're on, their allergies, what the x-ray showed. That's unheard of, treating the patient as part of the team. And studies have shown the outcomes are much better when you do that. And so this is always the vision, and this is what we've been talking about. So how are we doing that? The way you do it is you have to make sure that you're not asking everybody involved to change their behavior too much. You want to make everything very intuitive. So on the doctor side, you don't want to change their routine. Doctors are very stubborn. They don't want to learn a lot of new things, especially in technology. And for the patients, you don't want to make it inconvenient for them. And so we made this solution very intuitive. So the ability using the app on a Sunday night to do and make an appointment with a doctor or a specialist or a counselor or whatever. So 24/7 online booking, and getting rid of the expensive labor that's involved in that. So you don't have to wait until Monday morning anymore to call in to make an appointment in a doctor's office. You can make it on a Sunday night. You get instant confirmation in your email and text. You get reminders, again, automatically, so it doesn't involve any labor. And that's really helpful. And you can cancel the appointments whenever you want or change it as well using the same method. Having your chart and your labs and engaging the patient so that they actually understand what's happening with them, that's going to be very, very important going forward. Secure chatting, again, something that you might think, well, what's a big deal about that? Why don't you just email a patient? You're not allowed to email or text patients. I can't even identify a patient by email for privacy reasons. So the ability to securely chat back and forth between the patient and the allied professional, or sending forms back and forth and so on, is really, really important. Connecting health monitoring devices, all that rich data, that amazing data in the Fitbits and the Apple Watches and the glucometers and the scales. I mean, all that information that is just sitting in silos right now on different apps, not being used properly, bringing that in, sharing it with your healthcare team is really, really valuable going forward. And these devices are getting smarter. The Apple Watches, some of the stuff that's going to be coming out is going to be pretty incredible. AI virtual assistants. This is really big, and it's going to get bigger. So what it means is we have two products. One, we created with IBM on the IBM Watson platform. We own the IP 100%. And what it does is it's able to replace the clerk, that medical office assistant at the front of a clinic, basically. So not only can you speak to it in natural language, you can make spelling mistakes and so on, but you can ask, what time's my appointment? Can I change my appointment? How do I get there? What are the hours of operation? How do I prepare? Kind of all those things that typically you would have to try to call into a doctor's office to get information. You don't have to do that anymore. And it learns and it can continue to get smarter. And then an AI virtual nurse. And this is pretty exciting, but basically the ability so that when you make the appointment, let's say on a Sunday night for the doctor, it'll ask you why you want to see the doctor. And you'll say, I don't feel well, I have a headache. It'll ask you the same things that we were taught to ask to learn about your disease or what the problem is. So the same questions the doctor or nurse would do typically. How long have you had it for? Any nausea or vomiting, any fever or chills, one side or both sides, and so on. And so you'll get that information. It'll triage you, meaning that if it's something like an emergency, it'll tell you, you know what, don't wait for your appointment, go to emergency right now. Or it'll take that information and put it in your chart so that now you have the whole history taken for the doctor in the chart. So the doctor has the full history. They have a differential diagnosis with up to a 95% accuracy rate of what it could be, even what lab tests you should run, and even the treatment options based on current guidelines before they even said hi to you. So now instead of a doctor rushing to find out why you're there and then rushing even faster to give you a prescription, they can spend most of their time actually helping you instead of figuring out why you're there. So it's extremely important. And then telemedicine, the video conferencing part of it. I put it here because you can have, there's a lot of companies and a lot of different products, the Zooms of the world and so on. Number one, you have to make sure it's secure. And number two, you want to make sure it's intuitive. So let's say you have an appointment for 3 p.m. on a Monday, but let's say the doctor's running behind. The last thing you want to do is ask the patient to sit in front of a computer camera or their phone, not being able to use their phone for 45 minutes because the doctor's running behind. Instead, what we did was we said, let the patient do whatever they want to do, because again, this is patient focused. Have the patient continue taking care of their kids or working, and they'll get a notification from the doctor when the appointment is starting. So on the doctor side, we made it very intuitive as well. All they have to do is click the little camera symbol on your schedule, and it'll send a notification to your phone. The patient just touches the notification and the doctor's right there. So we made it extremely intuitive. And then being able to even reorder prescriptions and send it to you as well. Again, with COVID, that's been a very important thing because a lot of patients, especially high-risk patients, should not be in clinics with people coughing around them, or in pharmacies or grocery chains that they might catch something. So the ability for fulfillment is really big as well. I'm not going to spend time on every piece of these slides, just so I can have some time for questions later on. But I want to explain that we are looking at the full ecosystem of healthcare. The future of healthcare is not the virtual walk-in model, not the virtual walk-in clinic that you see from some other companies that are out there. It's about a full integration of small footprint of a hybrid footprint of clinics that are kind of hybrid, where doctors are seeing you physically sometimes, maybe 10% of the times, and not just the family doctor, but the specialists and the physios and so on. But most of the time it's going to be virtual. And so we do have a footprint of clinics, and that's expanding across the country and North America. But also really the focus that kind of differentiates us is that we built this whole technology not as an app and then looking for customers. We already have a lot of customers that we created this app for, basically. And it's built on electronic medical record, an EMR. So what an EMR is, every doctor that you ever see, they're always typing away on their computers. They're using some sort of EMR. And so that's where your chart is that follows you in that doctor's practice. So we own an EMR called Juno, and Juno is being used by 376 clinics, over 3,000 doctors, and almost 3 million patient charts. So when we created this app, we were able to draw from that low-hanging fruit and say, guess what, guys? We have now something for you to use to connect to either your doctor or one of our doctors in the cloud at any time. We also own a couple of pharmacies, but because we are expanding into the pharmacy partnerships, let's say. And so what that means is the biggest pain point a lot of times in a patient's experience is actually at the pharmacy. They intend to see the pharmacist about 7-8 times a year compared to their doctor maybe 3 to 4 times a year. And that's usually where they sometimes get medical advice, but often they also find out that they ran out of medication at the pharmacy a lot of times. And so being able to capture those patients at the point where they are running out of medication, or the pharmacist says to them, you know what, it sounds like you have a bladder infection, or that cream is not working for you, here's a better cream. Instead of being sent away, now they can just go into the little consultation rooms that every pharmacy has and swipe their card and see a doctor on demand, one of our doctors on demand. And so the pharmacies rent these kiosks from us for about $500 a month, but they're also feeding us patients to see, which is really important. We've already signed our first agreement with the biggest grocery chain in Western Canada here, but we're going to be expanding across Canada and hopefully in the States as well with this kind of model. Why is this important? And why do I think that this is kind of the future? On top of having this kiosk, we're also creating a link for these pharmacies to put on their websites or in their apps so that they can connect, patients can connect with doctors directly from those sites. And the reason that's important is Amazon is coming. So Amazon bought PillPack, which is a company that delivers medications packaged for you for the patients. They bought that a few years ago. And then they bought a virtual nurse, an AI nurse type of company called Health Navigator last year. And then they launched something called Amazon Care, which is telemedicine for their own employees. And then they launched something called Amazon Pharmacy in North America. So Amazon's coming to the fulfillment business. And so, you know, these pharmacies don't want to become a blockbuster that, you know, that kind of went out of business because it was focused mostly on brick and mortar. You know, they want to focus on the future of fulfillment and delivery and convenience. I'm not going to talk anymore right now about the IBM chatbot, but this is the way it looks, and we can have this slide deck available for you. One of our more recent acquisitions is a company called LiveCare that's been around for about 7-8 years in telemedicine. And what they have that I want to show you here is this cart right here, this big cart that was used in like First Nation communities, remote communities, oil rigs, and so on. And this cart comes either as a cart or even a mobile case, and has things like a Bluetooth stethoscope, an otoscope, a ophthalmoscope, and so on. So basically, a doctor 1,000 miles away can do a high definition exam, see the eardrum, listen to the heart, listen to the lungs, and be able to do a fuller exam in these remote communities that need kind of more hands-on, let's say. And so that's an option that we've had. And we are using it now in different locations, but the more important thing is it's also helped us expand across North America. So in the States, we signed an agreement with a company that's reselling the LiveCare platform to their own customers, and their own customers include Homeland Security, Departments of Correction, CDC, and so on. So it already has an opportunity to sell our telehealth platform to those existing customers, and we're pretty excited about that expansion. One thing before I go to the revenue is we did acquire just a company that we announced just recently, a few days ago, called Snap Clarity. And Snap Clarity is a company focused on mental health. And mental health is really, really important going forward in virtual care. And so anybody right now, I encourage you guys to download the app and give it a try. And it'll ask you a series of questions. It'll be able to give you a dashboard, but more importantly, at the end of it, it'll be able to match you with therapists across right now Canada, and hopefully we'll expand that as well, so that it matches you with the right therapist for the mental issue that you might have. And so that's kind of a really exciting thing, using technology, leading edge kind of proprietary technology in that space, which I think is going to be a big driver of virtual care. Really quickly, we're not a startup, not without revenues. We actually exited 2019 with 11.5 million in revenues. We're projecting extremely fast growth on the back of both organic growth as well as through acquisitions. We did a raise recently, and we have, I think, north of 13 million in the bank. So we have a strong pipeline of acquisitions we're going to be making, and this will change dynamically, let's say. Comparables in the space. This is a really interesting space. This is like, the example I always give is, this is the very beginning when I used to make fun of my wife ordering from Amazon, 10, 11, 12 years ago, whatever number of years ago it was, I can't even remember now. When it first started, I'm like, who would buy stuff online without seeing it and getting it in the package delivery and so on? And we saw where that went, or the Blockbuster and Netflix. Healthcare right now is at that inflection point. It's at the very beginning of the infancy of that. And you will have winners, you will have losers, but a lot of the winners grow through acquisitions. So Teledoc is obviously the big gorilla there. They recently bought a company called InTouch in Canada for $600 million. They're worth, I think, 14 billion plus right now. There's Amazon that I mentioned already that's coming into the space. Even Google and Apple is coming into the healthcare space and telehealth. QHR was an EMR company that I mentioned before that was bought for 170 million. One Medical is really interesting. That uses that hybrid model of both clinics, these kind of futuristic clinics that provide you care, really good quality care on the ground if you need it, but also the virtual care on top of it. And that's something I think you're going to see. You're going to see fewer clinics out there, but better, more organized, concentrated care. And you're only going to go to a doctor if you need to be seen. All these companies here are trading at extremely high multiples compared to what we are. I think we're trading at, 2 times next year's revenues, I believe. And all these ones are trading at, 9, 10 plus time multiples right now. That's mainly it. I want to open up to some questions. We do have about 113 million shares outstanding. I think I said over 13 million in the bank. We have 3 analyst coverage that range from $1.20 to $1.65, I believe, in terms of targets, 12-month targets. And so we do have some catching up, and we're pretty excited right now that we've done a lot of the hard work. And now it's about executing on a lot of the stuff we're doing and catching up to the other comparables that I mentioned. Jack, any questions?
Yes. Dr. Hamza, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. Let's jump into some questions. We're going to start off with the live questions, then we'll go to the ones that came in earlier. So the first one is, Hemi is asking, are there any other companies doing kiosks, or do you have a patent on this type of technology? And also, is there a plan to supply these to the US as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we're not a hardware business. I mean, really the hardware is simple. That's not the problem. It's about the whole ecosystem you're providing. You're providing an intuitive way for patients to connect to the doctor and to have a team-based approach and continuity of care. That's what we're selling, really. And so the hardware part of it, yes, we are going to be expanding across Canada and in the States as well. Like I said, there's some interest in various kind of agreements that we have that might be interested in this, as well as the mobile version of this one here. There are other companies that do carts, and different ways of connecting, but again, they're not hardware companies either. The big bread and butter, the big revenue driver is actually the patients being seen through this. So it's about how to provide a secure, convenient, comfortable way for patients to connect with doctors wherever they are, whether they're at home, at work, at the pharmacy, wherever it is. That's the whole point of this, and how to provide it so that you have continuity of care. Every patient that downloads the app gets a chart in our system because we own the EMR, and that chart follows you for the rest of your life. That's a big differentiator again. So that chart will grow with you so that we don't ever have to ask you again, what did the last doctor give you, or what are your allergies? I mean, that's there for the rest of your life, which is really important.
Okay, so Chris is asking, this is a long question, so I understand that you want your solution to be as patient-centric as possible and want it to be as sticky as possible for end users to facilitate adoption and to repeat use. What are your thoughts on expanding features such as patient education to make your solution a go-to education database for such information? Thoughts on this? And any other improvements to keep the patient using your solution between visits?
Stay tuned is the answer, and he read our minds basically. So this is what we are doing. We built this technology, we own it. We don't have to answer to any third-party vendors, and we're going to be unleashing other features that exactly do what you just said. You want a patient connecting to this app on a daily or even multiple times a day, versus just maybe 3 or 4 times a year. And so by doing things like connecting education features to this, where they can connect to it and watch a video about cholesterol or diabetes or your knee arthritis, connect with educators for live streams of different things, connecting the health monitoring devices that I mentioned before, so that it's not just the Apple Watches, but maybe MyFitnessPal and the calorie counters and the steps that you're doing, and connecting all that into a rich format dashboard that you can share. You're right, that makes it very sticky, but so does the chart. So the chart makes it very sticky as well, because that's your chart now, that follows you for the rest of your life. And you don't have to keep answering the same questions to a new physician or a new allied professional who doesn't know anything about you.
Okay, Hemi is asking, did you explore mental health sector government support as people are getting more aware on mental health?
Yeah, as I mentioned with Snap Clarity, that's our first full entrance into that space. We're going to have a lot more announcements on it. Mental health was going to be the driver for virtual care before COVID came along. So it was always going to be mental health being the reason that people do virtual care. It's been a literal lifesaver. And I'm not exaggerating. In my own practice, it saved lives, because there's a lot of, especially young kids and teenagers and young adults, that do not feel comfortable. They're already anxious to begin with, and the last thing you want to do is ask them to come to a waiting room where they think everybody's staring at them and people are running behind, and then move them to even a smaller room and make them even more anxious, and then only spend 5 minutes trying to figure out what they need and give them something really quickly. Horrible experience, and the reason we didn't ever see many teenagers being compliant, and so now that's been a lifesaver. It's been night and day. And so you're right, and governments around the world, and especially in North America, are spending a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of effort pushing that, and there is a lot of money in the space for initiatives like we are going to be doing, and we'll have more news on that over time.
Okay, Mark is asking, any issues onboarding new doctors?
Not at all, actually. It's been the opposite. We've had too many doctors wanting to come into the platform and see patients, because it's so convenient for everybody involved. The doctors who were initially resistant because there was such a shortage of doctors, and they were bombarded too many patients before in the physical brick and mortar side of it, because it was very inefficient. They didn't know what was in the waiting room, so it was very inefficiently done, are now incredibly satisfied, because now you are able to work from home 90% of the time, and you only go to the clinic to see the patients you actually have to touch. Which is really important, because then you're much more relaxed. You know what's in the waiting room, you know exactly why they're there, you know how much time you have to allocate for them. Before, it could have been a very simple prescription refill, or it could have been somebody having a heart attack or a mental breakdown, and it throws your whole day off. And this is a way now of triaging online, let's say, and making it more convenient. Their incomes have actually gone up, not down, so it's much more efficient that way. And so we've had total buy-in from the doctors, and there's no going back.
Okay, Rahul is asking, what does it require to get EMR access? Is it easy, or it's a barrier to entry?
I'm not sure what the question is exactly. We own the EMR already, and this EMR is already approved across Canada. And so we don't need any new EMR access issues there. In terms of patients getting a chart in our system, it's about us turning on that certain location. So we already built it out, and we just have to turn on every province in Canada that a patient will be allowed to sign in and make a chart, and it grows with them to see a doctor. And we are expanding very quickly. It's a bit of a land grab right now, obviously with post-COVID and the funding that we have. And so we are expanding quickly across Canada, but also other jurisdictions that we'll talk about in the future.
Okay. Chris is asking, in terms of potential incoming competition from large US-based telehealth companies entering Canada, have you identified risks in terms of losing market share to them?
No, I mean, the quick answer is that's awesome. That's great that they're coming. It shows that the market's there, that there's a reason to be here. And they grow, like I mentioned before, through acquisitions. They don't tend to grow organically, especially in new areas. So what they do is they wait until you make enough noise, and then they'll just buy you out. That's typically where it is. We already have over 100,000. We'll update that number later on. But we have over 100,000 patients already on our platform. Like I said before, we have about 3 million patient charts in our system that we inherited from our acquisition as well. So we have a lot of upside, and we're just going to continue growing really quickly. And it will be attractive at some point to the ones. So he's probably talking a lot about Teledoc and so on. They haven't gone after the direct consumer model at all. They've been sticking with the private side of it, just because it's easier for them to figure out the billing and all that kind of thing. But for us, we're very strong on the public side, and now the private side with Snap Clarity. So it's going to be an attractive, I think, an attractive acquisition target in the next short while, next year or 2 years.
Okay, so we got actually all of a sudden we have a lot of questions coming in. We're running a little bit behind, but let's see if we can maybe do a few more, and then anything that we don't have time to answer, we'll do like a follow-up interview.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so Harman asking, when are you releasing Q2 results?
I believe it's scheduled for the end of August.
Make is asking, JV or buyout of Dario Health planned? Question mark.
Sorry, I missed what you said.
He's asking a joint venture or a buyout of Dario Health. Is that in the plans?
Dario Health?
Yeah.
I'm not sure what that is. Sorry.
Okay. Rod is asking, what are your obstacles? Are there any obstacles for entry into Quebec?
Every province is unique. Quebec is also unique. I think our approach, it makes it so it's easier for us to enter Quebec. We will have more announcements about that. But I'll go back to what I said initially, that we believe the future of healthcare is a footprint in that jurisdiction and the vertical, let's say, virtual healthcare system, ecosystem above it. So we will make an acquisition of a footprint of clinics kind of across Canada and North America, and it'll support a very broad virtual ecosystem on top of that. So the answer is we will expand into Quebec as well. That is one of our plans for sure, and we have a way of doing that.
Okay, so we have two questions that a lot of people have asked us, and you kind of touched on this. One is, what's the difference between you and Teledoc?
Teledoc is a pure, I mean, they're amazing, and they're growing incredibly fast. And like I said, they are purely the virtual healthcare side of it. So I don't believe they have brick and mortar right now. So I think they're focusing more on direct consumer virtual healthcare side of it, which is great. And I think that was a great opportunity, and they'll continue to grow very quickly. I think they do need some sort of full ecosystem though, where you need to have some sort of attachment to a team on the ground as well for those cases. I mean, how do you take care of a pregnant lady, or how do you take care of kids that need vaccine, delivery, or how do you touch a belly? So there are some times that you do need to get that part of it. And the future of healthcare through virtual care is going to be that hybrid idea. You want a true, this is a marathon, this is not a sprint. Like right now might feel like a sprint, but this is the future. and the future is going to be that combination.
Okay, we got multiple questions again asking plans for U.S. and international expansion.
We'll have more news about that over time, but everything we are talking about is a universal problem, and this is a universal solution. So it is something that we are actively looking at, and we will have more information over time.
Okay, and a lot of people are asking also, where do you see the company in 2 to 3 years in terms of revenue?
I'm going to probably stay away from projections at this point, but I'll just explain that it's we're growing very, very fast. We have an incredible, strong pipeline of potential acquisitions. We are fully funded, and we're also growing organically very quickly as well. So it's very hard to give projections a year or 2 years out when, like I said, we're growing this quickly right now.
Okay, and I think, okay, we got also a couple more. Total market opportunity size that you see here.
I mean, start from the beginning. I mean, in Canada, it's $260 billion healthcare delivery. Pre-COVID, 0.15% was delivered virtual care. In the States, I think it's over $2.some trillion for healthcare. Some companies, healthcare companies in the States, I think Kaiser was doing like 53% virtual care delivery to their customers before COVID, much higher obviously now post-COVID. And so we have a lot of catch up to do around the world. And so just think of those numbers, and then a percentage of those numbers in the whole virtual care space, taking away from brick and mortar side of it. And so that's kind of the opportunity there. And so the answer is going to be somewhere between the 0 and those numbers, but also it's much more efficient. So these are going to be much more efficient ways of delivering healthcare, much higher margins, much better satisfaction as well from everybody involved, from the patient to the doctor to the government regulators that are seeing better outcomes.
Okay, so Dr. Hamza, we're running out of time. All of a sudden, we have a lot of questions that came in, so it's a lot of questions for a first-time presentation. So we're gonna do a follow-up interview with you probably in the next couple of days, and we're gonna address any questions. And again, if you haven't had a chance still, please send them in. We'll ask Dr. Hamza. And again, Dr. Hamza, I want to thank you, and we look forward to learning more about CloudMD in the coming weeks.
Yeah, thank you for having me again, Jack, and looking forward in the next couple of days to talk again.
Thank you, and we'll see you again soon.